Today I wanted to do a video about an article I saw a couple of weeks ago in the New York Daily News and the Daily Mail and some other gossipy sources. And apparently there is a complaint pending in front of the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission by a former bodyguard of the late David, and his grieving widow, Julia Koch. And it charged, or alleged, there was an atmosphere of a hostile work environment and such, and even discrimination. I have a feeling that the case probably, the EEOC is going to reject it, just because it just doesn't seem like it's that strong a case. But you have to be able, before you can file for a civil claim, any kind of civil rights violation, you have to go through the EEOC. And that was something that I found out too late in my case, and maybe someday I'll talk about that, and then again maybe not, where I was illegally terminated. But anyway, what was juicy was some of the allegations that this complainant had claimed. And she worked for the Kochs from January 2018 to April 2020. She was like a security staff person. But anyway, David Koch was one of the scums of the earth. I grant you that, because of his far right libertarian politics, and it did a lot of damage. Although his brother was immeasurably worse, brother Charles. And anyway, he had run for president on the Libertarian Party ticket, and of course he didn't get very far. That was back in around 1980. And then in the early 90s he got into this plane crash, and he just about finished him off. And so he kind of took stock of his life and focused a little bit less, not much less, but a little bit less on politics, and decided to do more cultural philanthropy and stuff. So he was pretty popular in the New York area. He had mansions all over the place, of course, with all that money that he had. But of course, I guess he felt like he was missing something, because he didn't have a wife, and all the three of the four Koch brothers who were straight, and the oldest one, Fred, apparently was gay, and he was kind of finagled out of the family business in a bunch of legal wrangling. But the three brothers tended to marry a little bit later in life, and David was like 56, so I guess he felt he had to have somebody to leave his fortune to. So this woman, her name is Julia Flesher Koch. So her name was Julia Flesher, and she was from Iowa, and so she was a Midwesterner like him. And she went to New York and became like an assistant to a fashion designer. And I guess they got set up in a blind date or something, and they didn't really hit it off initially. But of course, she might not have known how filthy rich he was. Now, I'm being a cynic. I'm really being a cynic. But undoubtedly, it sunk in that she didn't have to work anymore. She took up with this guy. So anyway, eventually they did get married, and I think around 1996, and they had 3 kids. Okay. And all of that. And then she was involved in all this philanthropy along with him. And then of course he got sick with cancer, and in his final months, it was really bad. And I feel bad for him that way. I don't feel sorry for him in a lot of other ways, especially when he was 56 years old and took up with some woman that was 23 years his junior. No, I don't feel sympathy that way. But because guys are so easily flattered, rich men especially. They're so easily flattered when they see a young, good-looking gal, and they just think that's a big feather in their cap. Well, even so, I just felt that he was, if this complaint has any validity, that he was treated like crap. I'm sorry, he was. That his loving wife treated him like crap. Anyway, according to this article filed by Racine, in a complaint filed last week, Racine says Julia used code names to hide real estate and lavish travel plans from her husband, told nurses to lock him in a room during a dinner party, and carried on a clandestine relationship with another man before Koch died at age 79 last August. And of course, Julia Koch denies it, calls it baseless through spokespeople. Anyway, the dinner party tale, Julia, 38, threw in mid-2019 when Koch exited his bedroom, tried to join the group, put his arm around Julia and said, "I love her." You know, he was crazy about her, okay? He was an old fool. I don't care how much damn money you got. And he had something like $50.5 billion when he died. But the bodyguard said, this former bodyguard said she was nearby acting as security when Julia instructed another staffer and nurses to take Koch away. So he embarrassed her, okay? He was just dying, he was old, and, you know, you can't have that. And so she had him locked up in his bedroom. And escort him back to this room now. You have to lock the door. Lock him there so he doesn't interrupt the dinner party again, Julia alleged, according to the complaint. And Racine further claims that during her training at the start of her employment, she was instructed by a superior that Julia, despite being married to David, had a boyfriend named Charles Manger. Manger typically visited with Julia at several Koch residences, while David Sr. was still alive, including the Southampton residence. The complaint filed with the EEOC states. Felicia provided some security for both Julia and Manger, I don't think it's Manger, together as a couple, it claims. And then, this really got to me. If there's any truth to this, you know, if there's any truth to this next thing, I can't think of a better argument than to return to the 90% tax rate that there used to be back in the 50s. And you wouldn't have all these billionaires running around. But anyway, Racine says in her 17-page filing that Julia also instructed her to never mention the $40 million Manhattan townhouse that Julia bought in October 2018 while David lived at another New York residence. And I believe that other New York residence was another townhouse that he had purchased in the 90s and had once been owned by Jacqueline Onassis. But can you imagine that? Just think about that. $40 million that David didn't even know about. That's how filthy rich this guy was. He didn't even know that $40 million was even missing. This is absolutely obscene. Refer to the house as Hamilton. Do not talk about this in front of David Sr., Julia allegedly told Racine while instructing the bodyguard to hide any news reports about the purchase. Racine claims that Julia also asked to stay mum about a June 2018 family trip to South Africa that allegedly included Julia's siblings, nieces, and nephews. Refer to this trip as Project X. I do not want David Sr. going on the trip, Julia purportedly told her. And she was afraid to even say anything, this security guard, because of she was afraid of losing her job. I was under the impression that they had so much money that if you don't just bite your tongue and go along with things, they'll get rid of you, she said. And then, this is another one. According to Racine's filing, a senior staffer at the security firm employed by the Koch family told Racine that Julia also commissioned a replica of the multi-million-dollar Amadeo Modigliani painting owned by the family so she could move the original to the new townhouse without her husband noticing. What a damn... he sure had good taste in women. If this is even remotely true, assuming this is true, he sure was a damn fool. And then, in his last months, even though he could have been kept alive longer, she didn't want him on the feeding tube anymore. So let's just hurry this thing along, right? I mean, he was going to die anyway. Let's just push it along just a little bit, okay? Because she couldn't wait to get at the money. Oh, this is awful. But anyway, yeah, David Koch was pretty scummy in terms of his negative effect on American politics. Not as bad as Charles, but he did enough damage. But by God, nobody deserves that kind of treatment. And that's what happens when you find somebody that's half your age, and she's not after you for your looks, she's after the wallet. That's it for me today.